Mr. Andrew, welcome back.
Thank you very much,
Brother,
Tony.
you're my number one guest.
you're my number one host.
Your reels pop off on Instagram.
All right, that's
I think we hit about 15,000 on your biggest reel.
Fantastic.
It's been awesome. The knowledge you've dropped on me has been so great. And the opportunity you're giving my team and myself, I just can't thank you enough.
It's awesome to see everybody growing together, man. That's what it's all about.
You know, I've been trusting and growing my business with you. And I think that trust right now is just such a huge asset in this industry and in the marketplace. But for us to trust each other in the trenches as we're helping out sellers and buyers, that's one component. But then with all the media coverage, with all the news going on, who is it that you trust to be able to deliver the right news so that you can pass it on to your clients?
Finding the right person to trust is extremely difficult for consumers in America generally. And I don't want to single out America. I'm sure it's true across the world, but we live right here in California, right? So who do you trust? Do you trust this TV show or that TV show? Both talking about the same subject, but like from different sides of the mountain. Who do you trust? I've had a rule that I followed for years. So if I read an article, what I want to do is go up to the URL on the web page and see who posted that article. Then when I go up to the URL and see who posted the article, I'll do a background search and see what money is behind that URL.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Then when I know what money's behind the URL, I know what leaning they have. And so I can trust what they say based on what I know they're getting out of it. So my first step is to evaluate, what does this person who's speaking to me get out of what they're saying? Does that completely disqualify them? Does it partially disqualify them? Or does it just mean that I have to quantify and measure based on that URL? So my first rule, number one, is click on the URL. Find out who's behind it. What's the money behind it, right? And unfortunately, we all know with sports, I'll give you a crazy example. So my son is 13, he likes to play pickleball, right? It's growing fast across America. And it's just now starting to get national TV. But when you win a pickleball tournament, there isn't a lot of money in it. There's maybe $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever, right? Why? Because it doesn't have enough people to warrant enough TV time. And if there aren't enough people to warrant the TV time, there isn't enough TV advertising, because the advertisers at the end of the day own the sport, right? So you pull the big advertisers out of the big sports, suddenly the money is not there, just out of tickets to pay the players. So you have to look at the same way in real estate. Where's the money? If it's somebody promoting a course, all right, so there's advice on that course. Have they built their career around being an alarmist? Then you need to understand this is an alarmist career giving me advice on the real estate market, that if they're calm about the market, they won't sell videos. Therefore, they have to be alarmist. So is the news alarmist, or is it that it has to be put in an alarmist box to benefit this person? Or the other person is extremely calm and extremely mellow. And the whole forest fires could be burning all around, but they've built their reputation on being mellow. So you go up to the URL and it's mrmelloexpert.com, right? So you know he's mellow. So you think, well, maybe he's too calm about it because he makes money being mellow. You get my point? So in this instance, who do you trust? You can't wholly trust anybody. I think a wise person now will listen to 3 or 4 different sides of the conversation and find where does that fit them. And remember, Tony, right for Mr. Smith is not always right for Mrs. Jones, because you can be in a different place. Let me give you an example. Somebody would say, should I buy a house right now? So let's take Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones, whatever. Should I buy a house right now? Who are you? I'm a Marine. Great. How long are your orders for? 2 more years. Great. I want to buy a house. Okay. How much money do you have in the bank? None. Yeah. Right? How much is your income going to go up? Well, while I'm in the Marine Corps, not very much. But when I come out, I'm a tech expert and whatever. Okay. So it's really not going to change. How many years do you have left? I've got another 4 years left. I've just signed up. Right. So you want to buy a house. Great. Where are you going to be in 2 years? Probably in Florida or the Carolinas. Okay. So we need to be very careful if you're buying a house right now, because the probability is that house prices are going to fall over the next 2 years. So if you overpay for your house right now, You need to understand that 2 years from now, when we need to sell it, you have to take commissions out of the sales price and closing costs. You might be upside down. You might be stuck, and you might be a United States Marine on the other side of the country responsible for renting a property. You can't afford to pay a property manager. That's my advice to them. So now, based on that, they've got a decision to make. By the way, that Marine, I would encourage him to buy a home that isn't in very good condition.
Yep.
That he improves the home, therefore builds in sweat equity. So if it does decline, he'll lose the sweat equity, but he won't be upside down. There you go. I've just given honorable advice to that person. Now, let's take now Mrs. Jones, for example. It doesn't matter if they're Mr. or Mrs. I don't want to stereotype, but Mrs. Jones comes in, right? Should I buy a house right now? My child is being bullied in the school where they are.
Yep.
My child is really smart. My child doesn't want to do jujitsu. My child wants to do advanced math. And I love my child, and I hate to see the child come home and hide in his room because he's being bullied. This was my story as a child, right? I've got an opportunity to buy a house on the other side of town. It's a little more than I want to pay, and I've heard the market's very good. Okay, Mrs. Jones, how old's your child? 13. How much longer in school? 5 years minimum. You want them to go to college? Yes. The school over here where you want to move to, what percentage of the kids go to college? 97% go to a 3-year college. Okay. So we're not just talking about your house price going up and down. We're talking about the future life of your child. Let's go buy you a home.
Yeah, that's a whole different dynamic. Then I just want a house. It'd be nice.
Right. My first question I ever have when somebody says, I want to buy a home for you is, I want to sell. Why? Yeah. What's important to you? So now let's get back to who do you trust? I think you trust the person who finds out about you before they try and sell you something. You want a simple answer, that's it. Does this person know about you and what's ticking in your life and your job and your children, or the church you go to, or how far it drives to work, or how much you spend time with kids in sports or whatever? How much does this individual want to know about you? Because if they know about you, they can advise you what to do in the real estate market. Now, in terms of nuts and bolts, I think the likelihood of the market not going down at least 30% in the next 2 to 3 years is probably under 10%. I would say there's a 90% chance that we're going to see a 30% decline. The different parts of the country are in different pressure points right now. There's places like Idaho. Actually, Riverside County is one. Havasu is one of the most vulnerable markets in the United States of America right now.
It'd be nice to have a house there. That's not something where people are living. Yep.
Exactly. Now, there's more people living there now, to be fair, than there were earlier on in my career. But nonetheless, the vast majority is built around the lake and the fun and all that sort of thing, second home and all of that. And I can Airbnb it, but the market's vulnerable right now. And inventory is going up exponentially fast. In many places, 200%, 300% what it was 3 months ago. And there are more choices. And I could take you to market. If I had a laptop open right now, I could take you to market after market after market.
Who is selling right now?
So this is a really intelligent question. So you'll here we go now with the different counter arguments, right? Depending if you're going to run for office or not or whatever, right? So the counter...
Running for mayor, 2020.
There you go. I'm not interested in political office, by the way.
President, 2032.
So 2032, yeah, I'll still be alive. So here's the deal. So what was the question?
You better be.
Huh?
You better be.
Come back to me. What was it?
Who's selling right now?
Right, who's selling? So the counter argument to the market going down is that there is a lack of enough housing, for example, in the state of California, to keep up with the demand, because there's constantly people coming in, right? Yeah. And that's a fact. And so you have cities that are doing ADU policies. So you can build another dwelling unit and so on. So why? Because there's a crisis. And you can't get permits through these cities fast enough because they're so bureaucratic. And so even if the builders want to build, they can't build enough in time. And the land became so expensive. So there's this lack of inventory. So the argument is, well, anytime there's a lack of inventory, then the prices are going to continue to go up. So here's the fault in that logic. It is true that there's lack of inventory. It is true that in California, it's not only expensive to get permits, it takes a lot of time. The bureaucracy is very slow. That is true. However, what's also true is that if you are Bob and Sally and you lived in Menifee for X number of years, and for whatever reason you moved to Texas, and you had some equity in your home in Menifee, you pulled a little bit of it out, went out, bought a home in Texas, moved your jobs to Texas, and said, honey, let's keep this house as a rental, because I've seen for years, rich dad, poor dad, if I keep the rental and pay it off, I'll be fine, blah, 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 blah. And you can rent it for such a high rate, so why they go to Texas. And suddenly they find that people aren't paying in Texas, in California. They're not paying on the home in Menifee. And the state of California protects that renter. Whatever happens, they hit a cash flow crunch. That person in Texas will not say, there's a lack of housing in California, I'm not going to sell my house. The fact there's lack of housing in California is irrelevant to them. What is relevant to them is they have a second property. They are not experienced landlords. The real estate market is changing. If they don't take their equity out now, they won't get that much equity for somewhere between 7 and 10 years. They want to capitalize it, sell it, get the money out, pay the taxes, move the money to Texas to feel secure again. So the fact that there's not enough inventory in California, not enough building in California, is not relevant to them. There are multiple examples like that. Somebody inherits a home and it's, 1,000 miles away in California, and they live 1,000 miles away. They inherit the home. It's maybe in a rough area or it's run down or whatever. They don't say, we shouldn't sell that because there's a lack of housing in California and we really feel an affinity for Californians and we want to be sure that people moving into California have homes, therefore we're not going to sell it. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, wait a minute, we inherited that house, we're not landlords, we need to sell it. And I could go on and on and on. Who else is selling? Somebody who's worked 20 years in a company, just got the golden handshake, they're moving from Philadelphia, they're tired of the cold, they're moving out to California. They don't care the market's going up and down, they care that they're 60, they've got X number of years left. They want a clubhouse. They want bocce ball courts. They want tennis courts. They want trips on the weekend. They need friends. They're going to buy a house. So there are categories of people, whether a market's going up or down, who need to and will sell. And the adjunctive fact that permits are slow in California is not their interest. So what's happening right now is you're seeing a lot of homes come on the market where people are saying, wow, if I don't sell it now, I could lose $100,000 in equity. Let's get it right now.
Yeah.
Or one of the many other examples I just said.
I agree with that. I looked at my house recently and I was like, I should sell this. What am I doing? Why would I keep this? If I didn't have a daughter that needs a place.
So there you go.
Right? I would have sold. But then it's free money still. The interest rate's in the 2, so why would I sell? It's free money. It's easy cash flow.
So there you go. There's a lot of people this time, Tony, who have those 2.5% loans. They're not going to sell.
Yeah,
that's what's different to 2006.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's 2006, 7, 8 again. It's not what I'm saying.
But you know what I'm seeing on the loan side? I mean, I'm quoting mortgage payments at $4,000 every day. Mm-hmm. And that was an anomaly just last year.
$2,500, $2,300, $2,600.
And now it's $4,000.
Yes.
I recently quoted $6,000 on an FHA high balance loan. I was like, Jesus, lady, you can't afford this. She goes, let me call my daughter and see if she can jump on the loan.
You see?
I'm like, oh man, that just doesn't feel right.
It's been the case in Japan for years. Well, multiple families jump on the loan and loans go out for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. I believe it's true to say you can even get a 100-year loan in Japan because of the escalation of pricing.
I would argue that is going to be one of the factors that deters from prices falling. And let me give you my theory. Loan limits went up 715,000, right? So that means high balance limits go from 922 in LA County to potentially over $1 million. Fannie and Freddie are probably some of the most profitable businesses for the U.S. government right now, along with Ginnie. So what are they going to do? They're going to adapt and they're going to change it. So rather than lowering interest rates and adding more stimulus, why wouldn't they just expand the amortization period? Because no one cares that their house is $700,000 or $300,000 or $1 million until they're selling.
Exactly right.
What they care about is on the buy side, how much is my monthly payment? So
you're saying that amortization periods will be lengthened, and I agree with you.
I would say that because you see it on the non-qualified mortgages. So you can do a 10-year ARM with a 30-year back. So that's a 40-year term. FHA has started loan modifications, and now they're expanding to 40 years. So now they're teeter-tottering with the extension of time. So if you add another 10-year, another 120 payments to the back end of a mortgage that was $4,000, does that bring it down to about $2,800? So now you're in a position where that buyer who couldn't buy that $500,000 home because it was a $4,000 payment now is now at a 40-year term. And this is all speculation.
Mm-hmm.
No one's announced this yet. This is just my interpretation of just seeing all these markers come into play. FHA loan mod goes to 40, loan limits go up. You're starting to see rates continue to creep up. Okay, how are they going to continue to make this profitable? Because they can't afford another '08 crash. We're only 2 years away from a presidential election. They don't have time to hit a housing crash along with a crash in the stock market. And so they need to have a vehicle to be able to calm all this down, re-stimulate the economy, and get money back into people's pocket. I would be damned if sometime middle of next year, we don't start to see more of the loan programs extended, start to see some more stimulus. I would say that that's going to be one of the things that prevents the housing market from dropping all that much.
So, it's just so interesting. And this is exactly what I said at the beginning, that people have different opinions. So again, for a consumer watching this video, listen to 3 or 4 different opinions and find a place that's comfortable for you. Because at the end of the day, it's your money watching this podcast, right?
Your interpretation, and it wasn't today, but on the last time we spoke, and how you explained it as a step down on how values are starting to drop.
Yes.
That is the best explanation of why housing will go down in value.
So here's an interesting thing with value. There's a term called anticipated value or aspirational value. You ever heard of that before?
I've never heard of that.
So anticipated value or aspirational value. So here's aspirational value. This was at the peak, right? So a house sold at $600,000, the last one sold. And the next one that sold, the people say, I've got nicer carpet, I've got nicer flooring, I've got a slightly bigger backyard. I know it sold for 600, I want 675. There were people adding on 50, 60, 70, which is a percentile is between 12, 10 and 12 or 14% in one pop.
Yep, all day long in 2020.
So you saw it all over the place, right? That's what's called aspirational value or anticipated value. It's not a quantifiable value. It's not a mathematically supportable value. It's aspirational value. In other words, I think my house is worth it. I'm not going to give my house away. that expression. So we saw aspirational value take place for billions of dollars of sales in the state of California. Now, when those interest rates kicked up, whatever it was, 2 or 3% over a 3-month period, and we saw the market grind to a halt almost. I don't mean a halt in terms of sales, but a halt in terms of growth. Just stopped. We were at the peak of that mountain. The peak of the mountain is like this. That top of the peak of a mountain, that is what's called aspirational value. And I will share with you, Tony, this is the 3rd time in my career that I have seen aspirational value disappear in 60 days. Gone.
Yeah.
60 days. Because that home, the last one that sold at 6, and because you have, 10 more feet on your backyard, you're worth 675. I am watching those homes go from 675 to 655 to 635, all the way back down to that 6, and then they'll sell because that is the value of the home, not the aspirational value. Now, question 2 is, when aspirational value is gone, what's next?
Drop in value.
So that's the question that you and I are discussing here. Will protracted amortization periods, in other words, if you're new to real estate, 40, 50-year loans, will that prevent a drop in prices because affordability is brought back in? You're just stretching the affordability over a longer period of time. You think that will be the case? That's certainly a valid opinion. So once the aspirational value has disappeared, will the market continue to fall? I personally believe it will. Because anytime you have oranges for sale, you see these people selling oranges by the road, right?
Yeah, delicious.
Or Trump caps. And that seems to be the trend now, right? So this guy's selling it. He's got 100 caps. When it comes out, he's all passionate about it, and the caps are $39.95. He's sitting there 6 months later and people aren't so excited about his message and he drops them $29.95. He's still got the same number of hats and less buyers. So anytime you have more product and less buyers, typically the price is going to come down. And that's what we have now. In many places in California, in Idaho, same thing. In Arizona, same thing. Phoenix, I can list you city after city. Florida, I can name you 3 or 4 markets right now. 200 to 300% increase in inventory.
Wow, that's incredible.
And don't forget, we said at the beginning, hey, there's not enough houses for people. Well, those people didn't die. The people who need houses are still there.
Well, but they can't afford it right now.
But now they have more choices. So if they can't afford it, but they want to buy, and you've got sellers who need to sell, not the ones who go, okay, honey, let's test the market, the ones who need to sell. Why? I've got a job on the other side of the country in 2 weeks, I'm going to lose my job. They have to sell. I just had hip surgery and I can't go up and down the stairs anymore. He has to sell, yep. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So the ones who have to sell, I propose to you, not a blanket people walking away from their homes like in 2008. I'm not saying that at all. But the people who need to sell will sell. And those who will sell in the next 2 years will sell for less.
How long do you think it takes for them to recover? When do you feel like we hit another point?
Look, typical cycles are between 7 and 10 years. So let's take a 7-year cycle. Peak, 60 to 90 days, aspirational value disappears, right? After that cycle, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 years down. A year level, 2 to 3 years back up. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 years rise back to aspirational value and you start again. So that could be 7 years, 10 years. But here's something super important people need to understand. That aspirational value that we saw in 2020 and 21, late 2021, all the way up to February 2022, that aspirational value, if that happened in 2022, in my opinion, if you don't sell now, you will not see the same value in your home until 2029.
Wow.
So now if you sit down with somebody who's 60 and they go, darn it, I missed the top of the market. I want to go on the road in my RV. I have a client like this right now. I want to go on the road in my RV. I genuinely feel they will have to wait until they're 69 to make that move. And you don't have the agility at 69 you have at 60. We have never seen a market drop 15, 20, 25% and come back in a year. It's never happened. It could happen. And we've seen with COVID, anything can happen in this country now, right? Yeah. It could happen, but there's no empirical data to support an opinion that a 20% drop will recover in 1 to 2 years. Because decline, it's an emotional thing. I'm not going to give my house away. Honey, we got to sell. I'm not going to give my house away. Honey, we're going to sell. 500 now sells at 480. And the person up the street goes, wow. And they put theirs on at 500. But the next person goes, honey, we got to sell. They put it on at 470. Sells 470. The guy at 500 has to lower it to 470. That's an emotional cycle. It takes a period of time. 30-day escrows, 30-day marketing times, right? And that's why declines take time. It isn't the gods saying it has to take 2 to 3 years down. It's because people take time to emotionally adjust. People take time to intellectually adjust. People are bombarded by all kinds of opinions by self-interested people, which confuses them even more. And the disaster end of the world people make people afraid. So now you're dealing with fear, you're dealing with anxiety, all of these issues. And so this natural economic cycle takes time because people take time to change. But the change is inevitable. When you have too much inventory and buyers, I didn't say not enough buyers, I said buyers who can't afford it, those buyers are waiting for affordability. And eventually the seller will meet the buyer. It always happens. That's capitalism.
That's brilliant. That was a basic economic lesson on supply and demand. I love that. It'll be interesting to see. What do you do to keep your agents motivated right now?
People. All about people. Everything we teach is about people. Interview your people. Why do you want to move? Where do you want to move to? When do you want to move? What's most important to you? When do you see yourself moving into the home? What will happen if you don't move? We teach those questions over and over and over again. And Everybody who works with me and for me loves and cares about people. And if they don't, I let them go.
Yeah, you have incredible people on your staff. I told Dominic and Blake today. I was like,
Good
Dominic,
guys, both of them. Yeah.
Good dudes. Yeah, we're going to empower them to go be the rock stars that they can be.
By the way, I love that. I just really enjoy that about you, Tony, and your team, and this whole natural thing you have as a young man of wanting to empower other people. There's so many young men at your age who want to empower themselves, and you're gonna experience plenty of power and success in your life, no doubt about it. But it's part of your DNA to empower other people. It's fantastic.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I don't get a lot of credit for it, but I think at this point in my career, like, I'm still so early on, and I was just talking to one of the branch managers I onboarded in Oceanside. I was telling her, man, I really am enjoying this piece of it, being more on this side, giving you the tools to succeed, giving other people the tools to succeed. I can sell all day long.
Right.
But to see one of my junior at-lows, the first guy I hired, when he bought a house last year, oh, that was better than me. It was a better feeling than when I signed loan docs. And that's selfish of me, because when I start to empower all these kids to be able to go and groom them, and I love taking, for example, I'm going to take a veteran right now who's struggling financially. I'm going to help pay for his licensing, like I did with the gentleman who got into your class, into your team, pay for their licensing, get them through the finish line, and give them a whole new world. That's a different type of like happiness and feeling that you get through it.
100%. You want to, if you're doing great as a loan officer and you want to make less money,
become a manager.
But, once you establish that model, this, I don't have to tell you that. You establish the model of what you do as a branch manager, and then you do that 3 times. Yeah. Okay. Now your potential just goes off the charts, because it's not just about, you're not trading time for money. Right? You've invested skills, you built a business. So you and I both in a similar place, I'm just older, of building a business rather than being a super LO or a super realtor. Even a lot of real estate teams are basically led by a super realtor who has other people help them. And I've actually stopped selling real estate. I do help customers who come to me, particularly with referral, from somebody who's known me or a past friend or something like that. Yep. But that whole driving piece, I don't want to steal those leads and that possibility from agents that I want to bring up. So my focus now is that training, that education, that building them up. But it's a lot less profitable until Tony, you build a model. And you build that model, you can duplicate that model, and that's where the true profitability comes in. But it's a sacrifice, 3 years of sacrifice.
Yeah. I'm young.
3 years is a long time to me, let me tell you.
That's why I drive a 98 pickup as much as I want the Porsche.
There you go.
Mr. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
You're welcome.
The common theme, you're empowering your agents, you're empowering your customers.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate working with you so much. Thank you.
Good handshake. Thank you for that.